This is KGW News at noon.
Thousands of demonstrators with a powerful and peaceful message last night here in Portland. They laid down, staging a die-in to represent the Black Americans who died from police brutality. Now, because last night stayed largely peaceful, the mayor announced today there will be no curfew tonight in the Rose City. Hello, everyone. I'm Brenda Braxton. Now, after most of the demonstrators left, about 100 others stayed behind and sought out police and barricades. Throwing bottles and rocks, officers made about 12 arrests. Nina Melhoff listened in to the mayor's update this morning. And Nina, he's looking to take some concrete steps moving forward.
Yeah, just like a lot of us are. Mayor Ted Wheeler says later today he and the police chief are looking forward to meeting with organizers of the peaceful parts of these protests that we've seen. Overall, both officials said last night went well. They had communication with the demonstrators and kept them safe to walk over the Burnside Bridge from Southeast Portland, and loved seeing how the large crowd policed themselves, stopping the few who would start tagging a wall or who attempted vandalism. Wheeler said with all we're going through with coronavirus and this racial crisis, he feels actually optimistic and that we're at a tipping point towards something transformative. But he wants help from all of us to do it right.
I don't see how we move out of this current mode of thinking, which is large demonstrations demanding justice, until we get to the, okay, we've now heard it, we've acknowledged it, so what concrete actions are we taking next? And I want to hear more from the community about what they think we should do and how they think I should be engaged, what role I should play while I am out in the community. Most of the time, I need to be out in the community more visibly. And I need to find every opportunity to connect with, meet, and hear the stories of those individuals.
Now, again, there is no curfew tonight. Apparently, the 50 National Guard members who the governor called upon to help did work overnight behind the scenes to protect and guard the Justice Center and the courthouse. They were not in the streets, nor did have any interaction with the public in crowd control. Brenda.
Thank you, Nina. Well, if you're walking or driving through downtown Portland, there are some street closures in effect. It's the area right around the Justice Center and the courthouse from Southwest 1st and 5th between Southwest Taylor and Jefferson. Police say they are blocking all cars and pedestrians because of safety concerns and criminal activity. There's a cleanup effort happening at Pioneer Courthouse Square. Volunteers with Solve are picking up after last night's demonstrations there. They started at 9 o'clock this morning. The volunteers brought their own cleaning supplies, they wore a mask, and they did observe social distancing. In Minneapolis, protesters defied the city's curfew for a fourth night, taking to the streets to peacefully protest. Earlier in the day, the family of George Floyd gathered at the spot where he died last week. It's become a memorial with flowers left behind in his memory. His brother, Terrence Floyd, spoke to the crowd, pleading for demonstrators to stop looting and destroying property.
If I'm not over here wilding out, if I'm not over here blowing up stuff, if I'm not over here messing up my community, then what are y'all doing? What are y'all doing?
Yesterday, the local medical examiner released Floyd's autopsy report, determining his death was a homicide caused by cardiopulmonary arrest as he was restrained by the officers. This conclusion is drastically different from the charging documents released last week. Prosecutors said the initial autopsy found no physical evidence of asphyxiation or strangulation. This new report came out hours after the Floyd family released their own findings from a pathologist they had hired. The independent report ruled the death as a homicide caused by the officer who put his knee on Floyd's neck. Well, today there is a heavy National Guard and police presence in Minneapolis and several other cities around the country after a week of protests that turned violent and destructive. NBC's Jay Gray is in Minneapolis with this update.
Hey there, and there's still an uneasy tension here in Minneapolis. Evidence of that the situation here at the 1st Precinct, the police station in downtown Minneapolis, looking more at this point like some type of military installation, heavy barricades, the National Guard locking things down here, just like they are not only across this city, but so many cities across the country right now. Last night there were arrests here, most of those, though, for violating curfew orders. For the most part, we saw a second night with no real violence here, no significant problems, and that's something that not only police, the National Guard, sheriff's deputies, but the protesters here are applauding. They say that the violence, not only here but across the country, has been taking away from their primary message, a message that policing has to change. The way policing is executed across this country has got to change. And of course, they want to continue to honor the memory of George Floyd, who died just over a week ago. We know that there will be a public memorial here on Thursday, and then another one early next week, that in Houston, where George Floyd grew up and where he'll be laid to rest on Tuesday. That's the latest from here in Minneapolis. I'm Jay Gray. Back to you now.
Well, the attorney for the Floyd family says he expects more former Minneapolis police officers to be charged. He also anticipates the DA will upgrade charges against ex-officer Derek Chauvin. Right now, he's charged with third-degree murder. Attorney Ben Crump appeared on the Today Show this morning to talk about the case.
I think it's very likely that the charges are going to be upgraded. If this was you or I, nobody would question first-degree murder. But why is it when a white police kills a black person in America, we act like it's such a difficult thing to charge them with what we would be charged with? George Floyd died because he could not get breath. His family is asking that we all take a breath in America, and we take a breath for equal justice. We take a breath for peace. Take a breath to heal our country, and we take a breath for George Floyd.
President Trump made an unexpected visit to a historic church just steps from the White House. St. John's Episcopal Church had been vandalized with graffiti, and there was a fire in the basement. It's near Lafayette Park, where protesters have gathered for days. Even though yesterday's gathering was peaceful, park police and National Guard troops used tear gas to clear the crowd so the president could walk through.
We have the greatest country in the world. Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to keep it nice and safe.
The visit happened immediately after President Trump's Rose Garden statement, where he threatened to deploy the military to stop violent protests. Joe Biden is criticizing the president for what happened in Lafayette Park. The former vice president spoke in Philadelphia today. He says the president's, quote, narcissism has become more important than the nation he leads.
When peaceful protesters dispersed in order for a president from the doorstep of the people's house, the White House, using tear gas and flash grenades in order to stage a photo op in one of the most historic churches in the country, or at least in Washington, D.C. We can be forgiven for believing the president is more interested in power than in principle.
This evening, stay tuned for a special edition of NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt. It's called America in Crisis. Look for in-depth coverage of the unrest from coast to coast. You'll hear from the protesters and get reaction from police. That's tonight at 5:30, right here on KGW. Well, here in the Northwest, the weather, it's looking good today. That's the view from our Cannon Beach Skycam on the Oregon coast. Let's bring in Rod Hill now. We have more sunshine this afternoon.
We do. Obviously, it's not the same deep blue sky in most areas that we had yesterday. We are getting some cloudiness up top, but still generally it's going to be partly cloudy and very comfortable. If anything, you'll see thicker cloud cover the farther north you go. This is up in Woodland behind me at Lewis River Golf Course, but even up there the clouds are thinning a little bit. And I'll take you back to the coast and Astoria, where the first wave of clouds is currently thinning. There's actually another push back behind there, so you folks could cloud up. this afternoon. There's at least a chance of maybe a sprinkle a little bit later on, but otherwise, inland areas will be dry. Downtown Portland generally going to continue to be partly cloudy. Right now we're at 66 degrees. So we should be on track to get up into the mid-70s, and that's just that comfortable sweet spot, I think, to most of us. Don't really have any big changes on the 7-day forecast. It still calls for weekend rain. We'll have that for you updated coming up in just a few minutes.
Okay, we'll see you then. Thank you, Rod. Coming up later, a salute to seniors. We have a very special message for the graduating class at Astoria High School. Plus, AGT has a new lineup at the judges' table. See how Sofia Vergara is settling in. And dining in. It's been a while in Washington County. We will check in with Thai Bloom Restaurant as it reopens.